Very good morning, everyone. Warmly welcome to the 2021 Post-Budget Forum to analyze, dissect, and discuss the impact on industries from the 2021 post-budget proposals. Organized for the 10th year by MBA Alumni Association, University of Colombo, together with the Sri Lanka's premier business newspaper, Daily FT. Today, we have created one platform for government policymakers as well as industry leaders. To represent the policymakers, we have invited State Minister of Money and Capital Market and State Enterprise Reforms, Honorable Ajit Niwad Cabral, Secretary to the Treasury and Ministry of Finance, Mr. S.R. Artigala. And represent industries, we have invited Co-Chairman Haley's PLC, Mr. Dhammika Pereira, Chairman Access Engineering PLC, Mr. Sumal Pereira, Chairman John Keys Holdings PLC, Mr. Krishan Balendra, Group CEO Hemas Holdings PLC, Ms. Kasturi Wilson, Group CEO Expo Lanka Holdings PLC, Mr. Hanif Yusuf, CEO Standard Chartered Bank, Mr. Bingumal Tevaratantri, CEO 99X Technology, Mr. Mano Sekaram, Director PwC, Ms. Chamen Tilkaratna, and Mr. Charita Gunasekara, Head of Research from SC Securities Limited. On behalf of MBA Alumni Association, University of Colombo, and Daily FT, I am deeply honored to welcome all of you to witness a comprehensive analysis from this eminent panel. To handle the proceedings, may I invite Mr. Nista Qasim, Senior Journalist, CEO, and Chief Editor of Daily FT, to moderate the event. Nista, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ranga. Aibowan, welcome and vanakkam. I'm privileged on behalf of the organizers to host this as well as moderate. I have a tough task, I must tell you. Before we start, our chief guest, Honorable Minister, might have to leave a bit early, and we will keep you posted at what time. But we'll try and make the best out of the session. And we will start off with inviting Mr. Sumal Pereira to share his comments on the budget. Sumal, over to you.
Served on this type of panels earlier. Today, I came here in a very positive mood because of the macro aspects which gives the private sector certainty about our future. We can't budget ourselves if the policies are changing from year to year or from budget to budget or from finance minister to finance minister. So this time we have been given assurance that for 5 years the policies will remain same. For me, that itself is good enough because balance things, it is up to the private sector to manage and deal with. For example, when I said I was attending this conference, one of my business unit leaders came to me and said, why don't you canvas for car imports? Because we are agents for Jaguar Land Rover and Isuzu. I said, when the rupee goes to 215, what are you going to tell me? So I understand the individual pains that certain industries might have, but it's a choice for the better of the economy. Economy takes precedence over any industry. And, as you know, over the last 15, 20 years, we have lived beyond our means as a country, and our foreign reserves have depleted. And now it has come to a difficult position where difficult decisions have to be made to put the economy back on track. So I'm I'd like to congratulate Mr. Nivad Cabral. He's also an accountant like me, but this budget has been based on economic principles and not on accounting principles. With all apologies to the accountants here, I say a budget of a national budget should be based on economic principles and should be consistent. So I'd like to thank Mr. Cabral and Mr. Artigala for doing the difficult work, and I hope the private sector and all other stakeholders will support it. You know, of course, all of us will have some reservations and some different opinion. For example, my only thing I differ with all this budget and everything is I think the business must be done by the private sector, and the government and the ministers must be enabling the private sector to do their business. But when the government also tries to do business, I feel other than in certain industries where it has a huge economic impact by giving it all to the private sector, like banks, like insurance, because if you give it only to the private sector, it's fraught with danger when things go they get difficult. So, but trading, running hotels, that type of basic business enterprises must be left in the hands of the private sector. And I'm consistent with what I said during 2 years ago and what I'm saying today. Those things don't change with governments. The basic principles of economics, you know. Thank you very much, Mr. for giving me the opportunity. Okay. And thank once again the Honorable Finance Minister and the Treasury officials for a difficult job well done.
Thank you, Sumal. I'd like to invite Krishan Balendra to make his own initial remarks on the budget.
Thank you. Similar to what Mr. Sumal Pereira said, for me, one of the biggest highlights of the budget is the consistency that we saw. There is a commitment to maintain tax rates for at least 5 years. We've had an extended period of frequent changes in taxes, which makes it a big problem to plan for businesses. So that commitment and consistency and what we saw in the budget this year is very welcome. The other area that I'd like to comment on is the thrust for exports. We have had many decades of trade deficits, imports significantly exceeding exports. If you look at the successful Asian tiger economies in the region, their success was all driven by exports. So it is another welcoming feature that there were a number of incentives for the export sector. Also references in the budget speech to working on more trade agreements is a positive development, and it's something that we would encourage the government to pursue. One other area which I thought was very positive, and I think it's an area Minister Cabral has been promoting, are the incentives for developing the capital markets. Again, the stock market in particular is an area that I am familiar with, and one of the big issues that we've had all these years is the lack of liquidity in the market and the small size of the market. The fact that there were incentives to encourage more companies to list in the Colombo Stock Exchange is very welcome, and I hope unlisted companies will go ahead and list and not be cautious about listing. It's something that will be very positive for the capital markets. Similarly, I would also encourage the government to look at listing some SOEs on the Colombo Stock Exchange. I'm not talking about privatization, but to list maybe 10 or 20% so that you bring some companies of true scale and size and create liquidity in the exchange. The other positive development is the incentives for real estate investment trusts. Again, something that we have been looking at and talking about for many decades. Finally, in the last 6 months, we saw the Real Estate Investment Trust framework being brought by the SEC, and this budget has taken a lot of steps to enable that REIT framework. So another positive development that we are happy to see. So overall, I would compliment the government on what is a progressive and business-friendly budget.
Okay, thank you, Krishan. I'd like to invite Dhammika to, I know we have a lot of positives. Dhammika, I know you, what are your initial views on the budget in an overall macro sense?
No, the macro, because with the COVID, this kind of a situation, the share markets are going up, mean the people have confidence. When the people have confidence, it's more than the budget, because people have confidence, they will invest. Otherwise, even though the good budgets also come, people have no confidence, they're not going to invest. For our case, our investment is not annual basis, every month is the investments are coming. Because of that, actually we are not waiting until the budget to come, and see what kind of a benefits to give, because we have to invest. The overall, the macroeconomic situation with the everyone is scared with the foreign currencies, but I am not, because I can calculate, because the import this time is going to be maybe 15 billion. Yeah. The export going to be a 12 billion, is only the gap, then the 3 billion. At the same time, the tourism will affect one side, but at the same time, because the foreigners are only 2.3 million are coming to the country. The locals are going abroad, 2.7 million. But the calculation, I don't know how they calculate central bank. I don't think they calculated the credit cards and other kind of a thing, the monetary mechanism. Because of that, even though you put $1,000 into each person is $2.7 billion. Because of that, the net effect is not that much. But I know that the tourism industry is suffering, but the macroeconomics, that the gap is not that much. Because of that, and the oil prices are low, and then, I don't think they have the problem, only even though say the $4 billion, $5 billion are coming to repay, anyway, with our situation if you are monitoring the last, the 2015, they have only 7.4 trillion debts, total debts. But today is the 14 trillion debts. But from 14 trillion, 6.5 trillion foreign currency, divided into 184 is the 35 billion. The government also have a revenue about 10 billion. Then to pay 10 billion income, the 4 billion is not that difficult task. Because of that, I am confident in the budget and the everything in the even with the COVID.
Okay, thank you. I will come back to you again. We need to take a commercial break. So we will, after the commercial break, we'll get more insights from some of the other business leaders who are present today. Thank you. Welcome back to the Post-Budget Forum organized by the Daily FT and the Colombo University MBA Alumni Association. We'll try to get more opinions as possible. I'd like to move on to Kasturi to perhaps mention what is most outstanding or most important facet that she saw in the budget.
Budget could have gone two ways. One way is, given the economic situation, we could have easily done the expected norm of austerity, tightening our belts and bringing some ad hoc tax again, versus it's been on, as everybody says, it's a growth driven. Identify thrust industries, which is gives clarity. Most importantly, from a private sector, what we've been always looking for is the word stability. It seems to be right across, and there seems to be giving a policy direction that this would be the case, which is absolutely welcoming. For us, for me, interestingly, it's the first time we have brought a social fabric into the budget. Whether the mechanism is right or wrong is something we need to flesh out, but it's a good thing to have, given the fact that giving these thrust industries will take time to get the money into the masses. The fact that I see that's a digital-driven, future-ready Sri Lanka, you're tapping on the right drivers, barring the fact that this is not going to impact immediately. It will be, again, the fruits will be seen in the future. The FDI is welcoming, but I feel that we should understand what are the kind of exports we are targeting, whether it's relevant to us, whether it's relevant, can we compete in global markets is something we need to see. Being from healthcare, I think I would have preferred to see a bit more funds allocated for healthcare. With COVID, we see pre-COVID, actually we didn't have enough infrastructure to cater to public health. With COVID, most of these critical assets have been taken over for COVID, and you find the general public actually struggling. So while there is emphasis of additional funding for mothers and kids and maternity clinics, I think we could have done more on health. We should do more on health. It was curious, we are doing more on defense and public safety, but health needs some focus.
Thank you, Kasturi. I'd like to move on to Hanif and after that Mano to make their initial key observation.
I just don't want to be echoing the sentiments, like you say, of the maddening crowd, but I must do that because the question is that we are corporate leaders. When we run our organizations, we don't change policies every year. We don't change our directions every year. So this time at least we have something consistently, at least on the tax angle of it. So the confidence levels from that consistent side has come up. I grew up in an area where it was the Lalita Buddhi's time of scheme where it was export or perish. So a lot of emphasis has been paid back to exports because during the whole journey since the export or perish, I think we sometimes lost our way there. We became a little hollow in what we were trying to do, but there are a lot of trust in it again, and we have a strong leadership both at the EDB and at the BOI. And in this whole budget, I also see the logistics played a very critical role during the COVID time and still playing a critical role and will play a critical role in post-COVID time. So we have also the pharmaceutical zone that is coming up. More interesting than all that would be the e-transactions for e-commerce, the development of 100,000 kilometers of roadway that would encourage a country like ours also to do e-commerce. But all that is the effects of the budget. But what would be important, of course, would be the proof of the pudding would be on implementation of policies. But more important would be that I would look forward for something that we have been talking for the last 25 years is about streamlining our information flow, a single window to do our business. Each government services can link together. We have a huge situations with individual legal problems at individual government institutions. I think the government must have the commitment and will have the commitment as much as they do have with the policy that they are having for the tax policies, that they would have a consistent policy on bringing all of them together. A single window is very important. I always say that we must move from a Satadu position to a Disneyland, and that is it has been done in the budget by having bonded warehouses. Bonded warehouses is just not about storing liquor and moving them about. It's about bringing the international players here into this market and making a true hub, servicing the entire region where we are surrounded with crowded, populated countries.
Thank you. Thank you, Hanif. Move on to Mano, please.
So I just want to look at it from a global perspective, from post-COVID economic realities. So what's happening around the world because of this pandemic? Countries are wanting to be self-reliant. And self-reliancy in a lot of sense, in terms of food security, in health, and also protecting the local industry to generate jobs. So this is the backdrop, and the use of technology in digitally transforming the nation. So this is what's happening globally. Every country, they might pay lip service, but they want to protect local industry and generate employment. So under this context, if you look at the budget, I think budget echoes that sentiment. Number one is the incentives what they're giving for agriculture, for farming, and local industry is very welcome, right? Because I think as a nation, first thing we have to have certain things we have to have self-reliance. Second, I see exports. I echo the same sentiments from Hanif. You export or perish. And this is long outstanding. We don't have a big domestic market, so we have to be an export-oriented country. Third, to invite FDIs, this is vital, and to have consistency in policy, whether it is tax or predictable. All what we ask in government to have predictability in the way we do business. Then there is disparity between rural and suburban. And I think the budget is, I've seen the budget, wanting to go to the regions, and this is utmost important because the budget also speaks about the knowledge economy. You know, we have to move from this old economy to a new economy. It doesn't mean everything is technology, but the tech diffusions have been given high priority in every sector that there is if you invest in capital. So to move to a knowledge economy, I think the budget has certain key fundamentals which they're supporting. The infrastructure, the connectivity, the innovation, the help for entrepreneurs. So all in all, I think, as someone said, it's not a mathematical or accounting, but it is more a policy direction. And I really welcome the budget in that sense. I think thanks to the minister and having the keys trying to get this implemented and to go forward.
Thanks, Mano. I'd just like to move on to Binguma. Just one observation on the budget before we break for before we have another commercial break. Bingumal?
Yeah, Nista. So we see after a long time, investment-friendly budget, like from a debt-driven economy to investment-driven economy. The other thing that we have seen is Sri Lanka is taking the fiscal deficit to something like a 9.5%, 10%. Now, this is not unusual. This is not uncommon. You see in most of the matured markets going up to something like 14, 15. And the IMF prediction for the average for the globe will be something like 9.5%. So we can clearly see that there'll be stress on the fiscal side, not because of fiscal stimulus, but because of the tax cuts. So there'll be challenges around, the revenues. But I think the implementation of the tax policies and broadening the tax base will be critical for the success of the budget. There also emphasis to move away from foreign debts. You can clearly see that we are trying to finance the budgets through local debts. There's push for that as well. As an industry, banking industry had done reasonably well during the pandemic, and we have come up with the moratoriums that was recommended by the central bank. And especially on the Saubhagya loans, there is provision on the budget to extend the tenor period, the grace period until September next year. So I just want to give that assurance that the sector is ready to take that on because there's enough liquidity in the system. There's also provision for startups up to about 500,000 rupees. The only challenge about startups is I don't think the sector is ready to take on those small ticket transactions. There's a lot of work to be done in terms of creating the policy framework and the the eligibility criteria and the monitoring for startups. So that's going to be a challenge for the sector, but that's something that we have to definitely embark on. There's one piece where I thought I should touch on. There's also a push to merge the NBFIs, non-banking financial institutions. It makes a lot of sense to govern those and actually merge some of the NBFIs with the NBFIs, or take some of the NBFIs under the banking conglomerates, but merging NBFI with a bank, we think we might lose the purpose of NBFIs, because NBFIs are designed for a purpose, like for the startups, for the SMEs, for the lower end where you grant a loan at a slightly higher interest rate, and the monitoring is very different to a banking system. So those are some of the things that I thought I should touch on. The one thing I want to leave is like the banking sector is ready to take on the challenge. Ready to take on the budget, and no new taxes for the banking sector other than the COVID 0.25. That's good news. We've been paying close to 60% in the past. And also everybody spoke about the consistency. So you see a consistent budget this time, at least going into 5 years. So that's a positive sign.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Bingumal. And we'll take another break. and we will come back with some more insights from the rest of the panel. Thank you very much. Welcome back to the post-budget forum organized by the Daily FT and the Colombo University MBA Alumni Association. We have two more panelists to get some initial responses, so I'll invite Charmaine to make her observation.
Thank you, Nishta. I'd like to make my observations from the perspective of tax administration. Tax policy-wise, we have heard everyone speak, and everyone's happy that the policy has remained consistent, and the relief that was introduced in January has not been clawed back. And that's all well and good. There is the other side to that coin also, is that where then is the revenue going to come from? But if you take a look at the budget speech, it's actually given there very subtly how the revenue is going to be increased. So some couple of important measures are to be introduced. One is the introduction, of course, of the GST tax on the 5 sectors that contribute to more than 50% of the government's revenue. Now, here there is a proposal to implement one tax online in place of all the various levies that are currently imposed on these 5 industries. So there we have an opportunity to monitor things better, make sure that people are not playing with the different systems and the different authorities. So there is a big opportunity there to improve efficiency in collection and thereby increase revenue, and I think that is the real main aim of the introduction of that GST. But of course, we'll have to take a look at the formulas and how it is going to be done, because in the past also we have had a consolidated tax being introduced to one of these industries, and then somewhere down the line again we have the old taxes being brought back on top of the consolidated tax. So it's a good measure if it can be implemented properly. Then the second, we have the introduction, or well, not an introduction, we already have a large taxpayers unit within the Inland Revenue Department. That's where the 20% of the taxpayers contribute to 80% of the revenue, the 80-20 rule. So there's a proposal to bring this large taxpayer unit directly under the Commissioner General of Inland Revenue. Again, I believe the thought process there is to make sure the monitoring is done effectively and tax collection is efficient, and of course maybe to create also a more taxpayer-friendly environment, and to be able to resolve issues faster, because that sector is the most important sector to the economy. Then thirdly, we have the introduction of a tax appeals court, which also is again a good measure because it will speed up the resolving of tax issues. Only one thought and comment there is to make sure that the court functions not only or merely as a tax collection court, but of course as a proper independent court, where investors are then have more confidence in our country and would actually look at that as a positive, and in terms of policy-wise also that there is an independent authority looking into that. So from a tax administration side, those are the 3 key areas that I would like to mention. Of course, tax has also been used in this budget as a tool to incentivize local growth, local industry. We've seen tax holidays being given to encourage the local industries, which again is welcome, because in the recent past there was a about turn on the tax holidays where we took back the tax holidays, so we are now reintroducing, and I think at a time like this that is impetus to growth. And the third point I would also like to make is, again, I mentioned previously, there are tax incentives introduced to encourage capital markets. Again, there will be a gap in the revenue with all these tax reliefs being introduced, but then there are these strong tax collection measures that are going to be implemented, and it's imperative that that is done correctly so that we can balance it out.
Thank you, Charmaine. Move on to final panelist, Charita of C Securities.
Thank you, Nista. So we consider this budget to be a very progressive budget, which can poise the development of many industries So my observations would be simply in terms of the industry impact. If you look at it as in a macro wave, except for one industry sector, most other industry sectors, this budget is creating a very positive impact. So if you categorize these industries into different sectors, you see that most of these industries fall into the sector where there is a strong impact. For some industries, this impact would be very strong, while for others, the impact would be moderate. Mainly, if someone asks who are the main winners of this budget, I would say that it is the manufacturing and the export industry, the agriculture industry, and the construction industry. If you take manufacturing and export and the construction industry, both industries are given a relief on import duty for material which are not produced locally, as well as to import machinery and equipment. Export industry in particular, a lot of investment incentives are being given. Then for the construction industry, 90% of the payments which are due from government agencies, now they can do a bill discounting and get paid. So all these are positive for those two industries. Then if I move on to the agricultural industry, in the agricultural industry, a 5-year tax holiday exemption is given for agriculture, fisheries, and livestock industries. And the government have placed a very high emphasis on the dairy farming. So dairy farming is also given a 5-year tax, what you call a strategic investment tax concession for 5 years for investments which are greater than USD 25 million. And it is also been guaranteed to give free fertilizer for the paddy farming. So all in all, the agriculture sector and any company which has an exposure to this sector would benefit out of it. The only sector which I see from my point of view which would be at a disadvantage is the plantation sector, because the proposed wage hike up to 1,000 rupees is going to add on to a increase in a significant amount in the labor cost, because in the plantation sector the wages accounts to about 60 to 70%, and the proposed 37% increase could be a significant impact. Right now, since tea and rubber is yielding very good prices, the sector should be able to absorb this increased cost. But however, going forward, the concern is when the prices are not so great, how would this sector benefit? So all in all, this is a very progressive budget for the sustainable growth of the economy as well as capital markets. And capital markets in particular, as Mr. Balendra mentioned, there are incentives given for companies to come and list in the stock market by way of tax concessions. So by this, not only the market liquidity and the market capitalization would grow, it would also attract new investors to come and invest in growing sectors in the economy. So my final conclusion is that this budget is very friendly, economic friendly, and it is very friendly for the capital markets.
Thank you, Charit. I think we have heard all the panelists, and I like to thank the minister for listening to all the comments. I think it's more positive than negative. And since he has to go to Parliament to join the debate on the budget, he would leave early. But before minister responds, I like to list two things. I know the listing was commended, but the reality is that sectors, there is a 14% tax sector, exports, tourism, agriculture, and related. So the listing that the concession that you're giving is 14% is anywhere there, whether you list or not, right? So other than the 50% off from second year onwards, 14%, which anyway, so there is no real magic to list. That's number one. And the other one is about this confusion about dividends, tax-free dividends to foreigners. And there is one mention there, which I think currently, but there are a few other qualifications in the current budget as well, that you need to, if you reinvest, your dividends would be free, or if you increase your exports for MNCs, it'll also be, there'll be a reduction. So with those key points, I like the minister to respond to the overall concerns, as well as perhaps reiterate the positives of the budget.
Thank you, Nista. I'm particularly glad to be here, because for the last 2 days I was in Parliament, and listening to my parliamentary colleagues from the opposition, I heard something quite different. So it's nice for me to hear from the industry specialists who have got different ideas as well as different viewpoints. And I have actually benefited by this debate as well as today's discourse, because I know what to say in my final wrap-up speech tomorrow. So thank you very much to all of you gentlemen and ladies for giving me that opportunity to understand from your point of view what really is the essence of this budget. Having said that, I would like to mention, Nista, that the key bedrock on which this budget has been built is stability. First of all, we needed political stability. We needed a government that speaks in one voice. We have for the last 5 years been affected by the fact that there were so many voices and we didn't know which voice to really listen to or hear. But today you have a very consistent policy. We have a long-term trend that has been enunciated very clearly, and that is the song that we can sing from the same hymn book. So that's a very important message that I received from all of you, and I believe that message has gone across to all the business people as well. The second is consistency with our approach. Now, not only are we consistent with the approach of our tax, we are also consistent with our need to have sound macro fundamentals. Now, last 5 years, one of the key areas that we faltered was that our macro fundamentals became weaker and weaker and weaker. Growth suffered, the debt management suffered, the management of our taxes suffered. We found that all those had repercussions on business. That's why all of you had difficulty in going forward with your own plans, because you didn't know which one was the plan. So today we wanted to put that to rest. We want to tell you that you will have a stable rupee. You will have stable interest rates. Now those are key ingredients not only for the government, but these are very important for you as well. And we are giving you that assurance by trying to maintain our macro fundamentals in a really positive as well as at the benign levels that we have today reached. We have a rupee which is stable, which takes some extraordinary measures to achieve. Sometimes, as Sumal as well as Dhammika mentioned, the extraordinary step that we took in curtailing imports was something that would have needed a very courageous stand to take that. But if we had allowed that imports to continue, even in the face of new challenges that were posed from COVID, you would have probably have seen a rupee at 250. Then your imports would have anyway stopped, because there would have been no way that you could have imported anyway. So we took key, clear decisions, which was an important factor in the macro management. So,
just on the imports restrictions, I don't know, you would have seen that the EU condemned it and wanted you to lift because it's against free trade. So also respond to that.
Yes, thank you, Minister. In fact, they had a conversation with me as well. You see, each country has to make their cut their coat according to the cloth. Now, would you want us to? That's a question that I asked the EU ambassadors also when they met with me. I said, would you want us to default on our debt, or do you want us to continue with some process where we could curtail our imports for a reasonable period of time? Now, that's the choice that we make. We can say, look, we don't care, we'll just import, and to hell with everything that's going on as a result of that, and we don't mind. But we took the responsible decision. And I think people need to respect that. Now, we are also suffering from tourists not coming from some of those countries. But we are not saying, please send us tourists. We are suffering. Our tourism industry stalwarts who are here would probably be bleeding. But that's the call that we take, and that's the reality that we face. So we have, at this moment also, there is a two-member committee between Industries Minister, Honorable Vimal Weerawansa and myself. We are examining these imports to see how best we can relax some of these measures, and we will take a process forward where we will do that. Coming back to the rest of it, Nista, I think we have to understand that we have to manage our macro fundamentals while if we want to have a stable platform for all these gentlemen and ladies to do their business. That's what we are offering. We are saying we will keep consistent policies, we will not disturb your own plans, we will not spring surprises to you, even in the context of extreme situations that we encountered, we manage those. At the same time, we want to also people to understand that this is a partnership of different stakeholders. we need to ensure that the poor and the vulnerable people in our country are also supported. Now, when we talk about building 100,000 roads, and that's a key project of the government, that is to ensure that people in the rest of the country are also upgraded. We are saying we would want to give water to the rest of the 58% of the people who do not have water today. Only 42% of the people have water. So the rest of the 52% or 58% also need water. So we are taking steps to do that. The elephant-human conflict, sometimes to us who are in Colombo, we don't see that as a real issue. But for people in those districts that are day in and day out worrying about it, not being able to go to school, not being able to do their business, it's a huge concern. So we are taking steps to manage that. So like that, there are certain key projects that President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has taken on as being the deliverables in his term, just like how President Mahinda Rajapaksa took on the deliverable of providing electricity to the vast majority of the people and fulfill that. These are key areas that we need to focus on. So we would be doing that. And at the same time, we want to see that education is supported, the platform for investment is supported. Now, I'm happy to tell you that yesterday we were informed that there would be a new investment of about $1 billion that would come into the port city. And that will be announced soon by those stakeholders. And that's going to be part of the infrastructure development. And I'm sure those of you who are involved in the infrastructure development will be happy to receive that news, because that would mean that a new impetus is going to be given to that sector. Just yesterday, we witnessed the signing ceremony of a $300 million investment in the tire manufacturing at the Hambantota new city. Now that, mind you, Nista, is an investment that will take on an area of 120 acres of land out of a total 400 acres of land which have been earmarked. So already 30% of the land area that have been earmarked for that kind of investment has been now has now come in. So like that, in the next few years, with our policies that we have set in motion today and in the last few days, we are confident that there will be new investment that will flow in. Investment is the key ingredient on which the growth will be anchored. And there's no other shortcut for that. If we have investment and we have investment flowing in at regular intervals, I think all these gentlemen who are in the private sector and the ladies too will have plenty of work to do. And we are expecting you to do that. I think the key that we are trying to promote is that we want businesses to do business. And businesses will be given the space to do business. The banks will be given the space to do their own lending activities as well as other activities. And we want to position Sri Lanka as a hub for that. The capital markets is my special responsibility. And I'm particularly glad that we have now opened it out. When I mentioned at my first meeting with the stakeholders, I said we want to see 500 companies listed. We want to see more and more types of activities within the stock exchange. We wanted to see the debt markets also thriving once again, not just only the equity markets. We want new listings to take place from BOI companies, from SME sectors, as well as startups. So we have put our money where our mouth is. We have said, look, we are giving you these incentives, but we want to see action. We want to see 500 companies being listed in our market. We want to see the total market capitalization of the stock exchange being at least 75% of the GDP of our country. That's what the peers are doing. So in an overall sense, Nista, that's what we are hoping to have. And I think the budget reflects that thinking. The thinking is a clear, business-friendly approach, and I'm glad that all of you have acknowledged that. I'm going to tell my colleagues in Parliament that whatever the opposition says, that it's not the same sentiment that is being reflected from the business leaders. And I think Secretary Treasury will also be happy to hear that. They did some extraordinary work in getting this together.
I wish you will be here for the second round, which might be much more volatile.
So that volatile part will be handled by the Secretary Treasury. Okay. So, but I'm going, I'll be happy to have stayed, but yes. As you know, Nista, this is a responsibility that we have to also discharge. So I'm particularly happy that you invited me this morning. I enjoyed the session. I like to listen to all of you. And please forgive me for leaving early, but I'm sure you'll have a great debate as well as a great discussion with Secretary, the Treasury and all of you. Thank you very much, Nista.
Thank you very much, Minister of Money, Capital Markets and Public Enterprises, for spending time and also being, as usual, frank and forthright in terms of the opinion expressed. So we will take another short break, but please do join us. We will have Secretary of the Treasury responding to some of the issues that I raised, and perhaps the rest of the panel will raise as well. And we'll have a more interactive, more insights from rest of the business leaders we have. So thank you very much. Welcome back to the post-budget forum organized by the Colombo University MBA Alumni Association in partnership with the Daily FT. We had a very good session in terms of initial insights, and then we'll now go on to some of the problems in the budget, or what the business leaders would like to see improvements going forward. Before we move on to the rest of the discussion, I'd like to invite Secretary of the Treasury, Mr. Artigala, to respond to the questions that I posed to the Minister in terms of clarity with regard to whether dividends of foreigners is going to be tax-free or not, and what's this rationale in telling them to reinvest in either expanding or in government securities and stocks and all that. I just want some clarity from Mr. Artigala.
Okay. Thank you, Nista. Thank you for inviting this seminar. Before answering your question, I think I have to tell or spell out the thinking behind this budget. So it's in a one sentence, if I can say, it's a country-owned inclusive growth strategy is spelled out in this budget. There are reforms. I think you all were talking about those things. Those are big reforms. We are not going to change the taxes for 5 years. That's a huge reform, I think, without any external or external expertise coming and telling us these reforms to be done. But that's a homegrown thing, right? So it's there in the budget. And also, if you take the taxes, we have introduced a 3-band tariff for all the imports, considering the raw materials at 0 level and then 10 and 15. So those are big reforms embedded in this budget. Then coming to the other aspects of the budget, why we have done this is like this. So if you take the last 5 years, and by 2019, the economic growth came down to 2.1, 2.2%. So what we feel is there's ample space, or in other words, the economy is functioning or operating in a below par level. So there's space for that. If you take the private investments, the numbers you can see has come down from 32 point something to 26, 27%. So that space is there. And what we feel as the government, that push has to come, and that push is given through a fiscal stimulus. So that whole story in this budget is that. So, and also, when I said inclusive, it starts, as Minister mentioned, start from the rural road, rural tank, or water service to technopark. So whole spectrum of activities are covered. And then somebody will ask, how are we going to fund this? So these projects that we have identified, the public investment, are mostly, not mostly, we can say majority of them would be done through local contractors. And it will be local funding, because there's no import content in these projects. Even the foreign loans that we are hoping to get, that is through World Bank and ADB, will be, the import content would be low. So those funds will be within this system. The government paying the private contractor going to the local bank. So it's all circulated among or within the country. So that's the model that we are looking at for these development work for next at least 2-3 years. So we will not embark on big projects other than we have identified the highways, the parts that we are going to do, and that's it, right? So others will be mostly bringing the connectivity, the rural development, because if you take our country, other than these gentlemen here, most of the economy is SME. It's 60% to 70% SME. So bringing them up is bringing up the economy, right? So that's the target that we are trying to achieve. Coming to answer your question, you had two questions, I think. One was the foreign dividends. It's tax-free. And what we have asked them is, okay, please, these dividends you reinvest in government securities or in your business itself. So in short, we are saying, please don't take this money, you reinvest in this money, because you have generated this money in this country. So that doesn't mean that we are going to stop their dividends or rather tax-free dividends when they send it out. So that is not the case, right? That's number one. Then number two, you asked about the listing part. Yeah. So if you take now, manufacturing was at 28, now it's at 18%. So huge reduction has already come in. Yes. So if you list, what we have said is it's 50% the first year. Yeah. So if you take a manufacturing company, it is 9% then, and then they will revert to 14% for 3 years. Your question was for the exports, agriculture, and those things. Yes, it's 14 now. So it's 7, then 50%, revert back to 14. Yeah. So there, I think there's a small anomaly. I think we have to adjust that to keep yeah. But that's one thing is that. But 14 is also a lower rate, yeah. Right? Okay. So we will think about that. Yes, whether we have to keep the same gap that we have to see.
Okay, thank you very much for the clarity. There is this growing complaint from the private sector that, okay, you are allowing foreigners tax-free dividend, but you're continuing to tax the locals. That is after income, and when you distribute dividends also, there's a tax on that. What's the rationale? Because maybe the locals make a bigger struggle in converting the ventures into profitability, and then obviously when you take dividends, you're taxing them. There is no real incentive to make profits in Sri Lanka. No. Do you agree with that view?
No. The thing is, now we all were talking about foreign direct investment, okay. Foreign money coming into the system, yeah. Right? So then, yes, we have to appreciate the local guys working hard and bringing us the economy up. But further, we have to appreciate the foreign funds also, because this whole equation, we need that part also to be filled. So in a lighter vein, we also have to get the salaries also. So somebody has to pay something.
Thank you.
The problem is then the local people not going to declare the dividend.
Yeah, this is another question where everyone was expecting a deemed dividend tax at least, so that people will start declaring dividend. Guys who are not declaring might get taxed as well. So that's also was. So
no, but at least that, because one country have to be one law. Otherwise, it's one country, two laws.
Okay.
For locals and the foreigners.
No, we are talking about two currencies also now, because that is the problem.
Yeah. Two currencies.
No, not two laws, two currencies. No, we'll. Yeah.
So some of the markets, MNCs have to keep part of the dividends. You're forced to keep a portion in the country. It's not a new thing. I think we are giving an option to invest, and then there's a tax.
There is no tax.
There's no tax. Yeah. So we have to think about it. Okay. Yeah.
No, I think better if you like 2015 they have only 10%. Then after the last government increased to 14%. Now increased to 18, but
what is that 18 you are talking about?
No, the withholding tax on the dividend. You know, the 2014, they have only 10%. Then the last regime increased to 14. But this regime increased to 18, and foreigners, no 18%. Then it's one country, people, because you know, even though our board level, people are discussing how the one country, the two different laws. You know, one for the locals, one for the foreigners. At least we can do that to bring down to the 18 to 14 and have everyone, you know, equal. You know, I'm not asking to, you know, remove the whole thing, but the better to bring down that at least 14, then you will have the same revenue.
Yeah. Okay, we'll take a break for a commercial break, and we'll come back to some of these interesting. I want more comments from the panel as well, so that there is more clarity. And thank you very much, and we'll be back soon. Welcome back to the post-budget forum organized by the Colombo University MBA Alumni Association and the Daily FT with Standard Chartered Bank as the strategic partner. We would like to continue this discussion. I'd like to move on to the business leaders who are here to get their pulse in terms of this budget. Definitely brought in lots of tax incentives. I think there is a minimum of 3 to 5 and a maximum of 10-year tax concessions going forward if you invest in some of these sectors. This is a common question to the conglomerates, business leaders we have here. Do you find that as attractive for you to diversify into areas where you are not currently in? For example, agriculture, fisheries, there is also renewable energy. I know some are already in, but there is lots of new sectors that are talking about. Dairy is one sector where government is really pushing. I want to ask, would you be diversifying in the next 3 years? If not, why? I like Krishan to take on this and then move on to Kasturi as well as Dhammika and also Sumal.
Yes, as I said, Nista, we welcome the incentives given to various industries, in particular the export industry, because that is a key sector for the country. As a group, I think we will look at diversifying, but the first thing we would look at is, can that investment be material to the group and meaningful to the group in terms of scale? The second is that while the tax incentives help, there are so many other aspects that you have to consider. Is the rest of the supply chain there? Are the people skills available in the country? Are the services available in the country? So it is much more than just the tax concessions, but certainly the tax concessions help in making that decision.
Okay. No, what I'm asking is that there is so much of expectation from the government on the private sector to, particularly the blue chips, to drive, to lead the way forward. And you all are diversified, and you all have gone through thick and thin of the whole business cycle. So they're expecting from you. So that's why I'm asking this question.
That is, yes. We will actively look at it now that the incentives have been announced and there is so much trust in certain areas. We will actively look at it. Okay. But what I wanted to say was there is more than tax concessions that have to be considered.
Okay. Kasturi?
Yeah, so from a conglomerate point of view, firstly you'll see whether it's aligned to your kind of spaces you work. And being in consumer and healthcare, most of the thrust growth incentives are within those, how you look at these two industries. But like Ishan said, it is also about the scale on which you can impact. You should be able to get in and actively get some scale, and whether there is any element of global markets and the competitiveness of Sri Lanka when you enter in. When we enter in, it can't be in a place where we cannot grow it and take Sri Lanka out. But having said that, these industries, one thing COVID taught us is there is a space for everybody to work in. So if it's agri, there is an entrepreneur's role to be played, there's an SME who can do it. And like conglomerates will do the other aspect of consumer-driven aspects, even taking a SME to a larger scale, enabling them. So there has to be a role, I think we large conglomerates have to support SMEs to scale up and especially taking it out to global. it's interesting that these spaces have opened up, and for us it's aligned to our portfolio, and we as HEMAs, we of course have this purpose of healthful living, which means making consumers, giving them better quality products and making them healthier. So it's aligned to it. How we can make it impactful and relevant for Sri Lanka and scale it up is what we'll look at.
Hanif, would you diversify? Yeah.
When I look at the budget, Nista, there's already a position to diversify or expand the business that we are in on the VROs exemption for bonded VROs.
Yeah, again related to your core business.
Again related. If I'm doing something unrelated, I would allow my friends in the blue chip company to do that, and I would do the last part of it. But coming back, no, I would like to remain to my related business.
Emerging blue chip or already a blue chip?
Thank you.
Okay, Dhammika?
No, actually we are in the sectors, but only not covering the dairy. It's a policy decision. We are not going to the dairy.
Why aren't you going to dairy? There is a 5-year tax holiday. We have a government that's championing self-sufficiency in
but
cement,
actually we are not deep,
sugar.
No, but because as a policy, we are not going to the dairy.
Okay. Why I'm asking is, but these guys have a lot of reserves. They can be first to market and first to invest. That's why I'm asking. Sumal, any diversification? You have already diversified, but anything that
because this COVID situation has brought to our attention the importance of food security. Food security should be one of the national priorities, and when it becomes a national priority, as responsible corporates, we must, if possible, support that. Because without food security, it's very dangerous. This COVID emphasized that.
True.
And we have already embarked on investing in some Mahavali land, and we hope to do agriculture and livestock. Fisheries, we are looking at some opportunities with some foreign investors.
Okay.
We are definitely going into agriculture and livestock for sure.
Okay, fine, thank you. So I think that we have some breaking news from Sumal. Thank you for going public about your new investments. And I wish
these are not very profitable, I must tell you.
So you're doing social service, is it?
No. National service.
National service, okay. Maybe you might get a title as well. We will come back after a short break and get more insights and further points from the budget 2021. Thank you. Discussion, including breaking news, corporate breaking news, and we would like to continue the discussion. And I want to still remain on the theme of good diversification and local reliance or increasing local reliance. Kasturi, I just want to come back to you. There is a huge push on pharma, including a dedicated zone coming up. I know you're in the industry. I know we have had this. It's always a government's popular theme. It's very politically interesting to keep saying, we'll become self-sufficient in this, that, but we have failed for the last 70 years, right? I mean, okay, assuming that we have consistency in terms of policy, what do you think we need to do to get it right, at least this time?
So that's a valid question. So I can't shy away from the fact that it could have been a popularistic kind of a theme coming up initially. But having said that, being self-reliant in pharmaceutical is a trend we see in the region. Everybody wants to have self-reliance. Our problem as Sri Lanka and any country which is of our size, cannot be self-sufficient being this smaller country, purely because we need access to new sciences, we need R&Ds, deep pockets, economies of scales, as well as the raw material APIs and stuff. How do we make it work? And I love the fact that they're putting a dedicated park. That means people don't have to sit and replicate the affluent ponds, the common utilities, which is a huge investment, right? that alone is not enough. You need to have the other ingredients to make this work. Is it can't be only for self-sufficiency and domestic, it has to be for export, otherwise this won't work. When you talk about that, you need global partners to come in. How do you attract partnerships? With what are you going to attract? So this FDI basket and goodies you put in is important in it. How do you plug into global technologies in, or the research and development capabilities, because we are not going to do that. We don't have the capability, it will take time. It's not saying that we don't have it. You can look at the countries like Taiwan and Israel who chose certain niche markets and then products and then grew. And how do you give access to supply chain? I mean, that's the biggest problem, being this small size. How do you get the economies of scale, and how do you get the high quality supply chain? So at the end of it, it is not, in pharmaceuticals, it's not only producing. The outcome should be that you have better healthcare outcomes or equally good than what you're getting imported. And it has to be access to the cost is also a very important factor. But I believe if you address these things in some way, get the right people to the table, you should sort it out. And given post-COVID or during COVID, one thing everybody around the region, the big pharma companies are looking at is how can they minimize supply chain disruptions. They are looking for alternate source. But this as only a local self-sufficient strategy won't work.
Okay, fine. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because I think the driving force is that we are spending $500 million in importing, but I think government is looking at halving that, not really replacing that 500, but reducing it. But thanks for that. I like the panel to focus on a few macro issues. One is this famous retirement age being increased. Do you guys agree? The question is about, you will obviously keep quality people, whether they are 70 or 80, but what do you do with the rest of the people where you have? Plus, I think there were some expectations of flexibility in labor laws, particularly post-COVID. So I like to bring Manu into this conversation. Manu Sekam, would you like to comment on two things? One is, because you're in the IT industry, which you are looking for young talent, right? And also this issue about, we have about 100,000 plus coming every year to the labor force. And what the government has done is put at the end of the pipe, they put a stop, right? By increasing the retirement age. So the end of the pipe, it's blocked, and you're having more people coming into the labor force. How do you manage this situation? And one thing, should government decide to tell private sector, look, you increase it's a private sector decision. Shouldn't it be a private sector decision rather than government telling, increase the retirement age at 60? Quick comments from the panel.
Yeah. So we are not that worried about retirement age because it's a long way to go for our younger engineers. Only a few of us need to worry. So in that sense, I will take the retirement age. But I think one part I was disappointed about the budget is the labor reforms in a post-COVID scenario, right? Because if you look at the tech industry, not only tech industry, all industry, when a pandemic like this hits you, first thing you do is you freeze recruitment, right? Because these are days of uncertainty. So you freeze recruitment, and it's a little watch and play game. Now in our industry, because there's so much of graduates coming out, and it is very important for our supply chain and get them out, the sector has appealed and said, during this pandemic, give us to take temporary people, right, and amend the laws just for this period. Give 2 years, and so we didn't see that forthcoming, right? And it's also important. One is we didn't see that coming, and then also it's important to really to look at these laws in the current context. It's very important to protect labor rights, but it's also very important also to see how do you create employment during pandemic, right? So I think this is something which needs to be looked at. How do you, because you will have a lot of graduates coming out in technical fields, and it must be easy for companies to hire them in the temporary, because if they stay at home, again, they won't have that thing of industrial training. So you must open this up to get more people into the industry and have flexibility within the next 1 or 2 years, because we all know this pandemic will go out in some time, to ensure that they are, and maybe that is also for most companies, it might be a good strategy that you increase your workforce during this time and look for delivering better service when the curve is going up.
Okay, so is this the rest of the panel sort of express the same sentiment, I guess, in terms of flexibility on labor?
Yeah, but either that our company, we have the limit with the good people we always keep.
Okay.
But the only thing, the problem is that the 55, then when they are reaching the 55, then they have a like a labor level, they have a high salaries. If you continue to increase another 5 years, then the company will affect that part. But of course, if they have if you can create more jobs and like 100,000 every year, then the new freshers can go to that. Then we can, anyway we have to keep, because then they have no people. But only thing, if you are not creating the job, then we increase that 55 to 60. Next 5 years, they have no new jobs.
Right. No, I think, Mr. Article, I think the issue is, yes, there are certain sectors or institutions where you need to retain people, but when you come with an across-the-board rule, you're really sort of limiting the room for more innovative practices in hiring and retrenchment. Sumal, you want to comment on increasing the retirement age?
I think it should not be compulsory. It can be at the employer's discretion. It can be 55 to 65 even. But if that person is worth it and is fit enough and good enough, he will retain. No employer will sack a good employee or get rid of a good employee. But that is one way where the corporates or the employers are able to improve efficiency by that retirement, using that retirement age. So my suggestion is keep it at 55 and say they can go on to 61. That is up to the employer and the employee, both. If they both want, if one of the parties don't want, then let it be stopped at 55.
Okay. Yeah.
It's like a marriage,
Sri Lanka is one of the lowest in the world. A lot of the matured markets have around 60, 65, going up to 67. In some markets, you don't have retirement age. So in that context, I think having a 55 doesn't make sense, definitely for industries like banking, because you come to a certain maturity and that's the time you actually take it to the next level. So the fact of the youngsters joining the workforce and not having opportunities for them is a problem that we have created. I think it's important that we create more job opportunities, but specifically very quickly on the labor laws, I think I'm also we were watching at this whole labor law thing for the last 10, 15 years, nothing has happened. We would like to see some reforms around that, because we would like to see from a job security to a career opportunity versus career opportunity a transformation where youngsters get a chance to come and learn, earn and grow. So that's missing in the Sri Lankan labor laws.
Okay, right. Thank you very much. We'll take another break and please join us for more insights from the business leaders. Thank you. Welcome back to the another session of the daily FT Colombo University MBA Alumni organized post-budget forum. We will like to focus on few tax issues that I'm looking for some responses from the Secretary of the Treasury. There is a lot of confusion and concern in terms of the new composite tax, the GST, plus the COVID insurance tax, the 0.25% of the turnover. One is whether it's going to be, whether they can recover it from the customer, what happens to companies with low margins, loss-making companies. What about export companies who are tax-free? And you're coming with more concessions under the ST, Special Strategic Development Projects Act as well. Can you shed some clarity on...
First about the composite tax.
Yeah.
So it's as Mrs. Trigaratha mentioned, it's a simplification of the taxes, because if you take a commodity like cigarettes, so today we have several taxes. So this is nothing new also in a way, because we have this special commodity levy, which is in lieu of different taxes, we have put one tax. So similarly, for these items, there would be a composite tax. And it will we are trying to move to this online system, thereby liberating the, say for an example, excise department. They can now, after this is implemented, they can go after the illicit liquor and things like that. So, and that will indirectly or it will enhance the revenue from the other side. So that is the position there. So it will be coming under the Finance Act, and hopefully we are going to implement that from 1st of January. Until then, the present structure will be prevail, right? So that is about that.
Would you, that means on those 5 product categories or sectors, there won't be any other tax already?
No, just one tax. And then you asked
COVID insurance.
Insurance. It will be going to a separate fund. It's not coming to the consolidated fund. So basically, it's 0.25 from your top line, and I don't think the companies will grumble, because the top line is made or generated by these employees, right? So you have to look after them in a difficult time. And also, even the loss-making companies pay 2.25 ESC, right? And if you take the banks, they were paying debt recovery of 7.5%. So all those taxes are not there. The corporate taxes have come down from 28 to 18, right? So it's in a way social obligation, may I call it, to look after your own people. So that's the thing, and it will be a separate in a separate fund, dedicated fund. We are not going to touch that because if it comes to the consolidated fund, then it will be a problem. So that's the thinking of that. That's what you want.
Okay, right. No, would that mean that you're also giving certain sectors a cushion? Yes, but also making them complacent. I mean, I know we have a pandemic. Is it going to be a permanent, like we had the various taxes have been permanent, despite...
No, because it's specifically mentioned to look after the employees when the loss of employment, the temporary loss of employment.
Yeah, in other 2 sectors, right?
Yeah.
Wholesale and tourism.
Yeah, so we may have to have certain exceptions or some limitations or some, in a way, we can say some, say for tourism, because you mentioned that, right? So they are in a way suffering at this time. So there would be certain time limit. We are thinking of that to give them that waiver-like thing, right? So there would be certain things like that. We are not, in a way, discarding those factors when we design this.
Okay. I'd like to get a response from the panel. I mean, you're comfortable with that tax? No, I'm saying, I mean, it was clarified why they were bringing in. I mean, is there rationale? Is it?
As I said, social part was something I think we have responsibility. My question is, some of the companies, most of them are taking a call not to lay off staff and making sure we don't add burden to the economy. So we are retaining, we are paying salaries, and then whether it's 0.25, it's a big amount, and it should go to the right cause and the right person, and there has to be transparency, because it's hard. It's companies who are looking after their employees. You're telling them to contribute towards people who are losing. So is it going to encourage behavior? Right? You let go staff. Don't worry, there is a fund.
Yeah, that's right.
It has to be thought through a bit more, and it has to be equitable to all, because you can't be saying that you all are the economic engine, you all are thriving, and contribute to it, because we are taking a lot of hit by keeping people in employment, making sure there's no cut in salary and stuff. But it's a good cause. I must say, it's a welcome cause.
Krishan, because you also have travel companies, tourism companies.
Yes.
Anyway, you're spending on taking care of your employees, and here I'm asked to pay another 0.25% to a more comfortable. I mean, you guys are cash reserve. You all are okay. So you're actually, there is additional burden on tourism and travel companies in paying this to look after the rest of the industry.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, the tourism companies don't have much revenue, so this tax impact won't be so much.
Yeah.
But I think when I first saw that, I thought I agree with what ST said, because 1 year ago we had taxes which were so much more. We had a 1% NBT, we had much higher VAT, so a 0.25% insurance tax like this is something that as a business sector we should be prepared to take. Just on the concept of an insurance fund for unemployed people and people impacted by COVID, I think we need to keep in mind what Kasturi said, is that we are continuing to maintain our cadre. We haven't laid off anyone, and in fact, in most cases, salaries are the same as before, or in all cases, in the case of our group. And also in some businesses, we are continuing to employ more people. We are growing. Our supermarkets business is one example. So there are businesses that are continuing to recruit and grow. So in that context, having a tax like this as an insurance fund, we have to sort of look at. But overall, when I consider where we are today compared to the taxes we had 1 year ago, I don't think there is much to grumble about a 0.25% revenue tax.
And is it recoverable, or is just you can't pass it on to the customers?
No.
They will.
Yeah.
They will. Okay. So it can be passed on. So I think
that will happen. That will happen.
Yeah.
We won't tell that, but that's the normal way.
Yeah.
Right?
And this argument about low margin business, can they afford it? Particularly in margins are very thin in certain sectors.
No, so we'll consider those things. But
Okay.
but what I was trying to say, as Kishan mentioned, the loss-making companies were also paying 0.25, right? As ESC.
Okay.
As ESC, they were paying 0.25.
So I think the government is sort of maximizing the tolerance level of the private sector.
You can call it that way if you want.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll go for another short break and come back again. Thank you very much. Most probably the last session of the post-budget seminar organized by the Daily FT and the Colombo University MBA Alumni Association. And we will, what I plan to ask is this time perhaps tax the business leaders we have on an issue that is very populist, but Sri Lanka has failed miserably over the last so many years. That is introducing tax amnesties and trying to bring back this ill-gotten wealth, or wealth that is hidden overseas, supposedly, all that. And then we have tried to convert the black into white. And just to give a background, we had the first Foreign Exchange Amnesty Act in 1993, right? And then there is new, 1993 was the first one. And then we see successive governments coming with attractive options or attractive offers to bring all this money back. But I think Secretary of the Treasury might confirm this, but apparently, despite about 5 legislation in place, the Indian Revenue hasn't given a single tax amnesty to any Sri Lankan, right? So I'm asking, one is from the Secretary of the Treasury, you have this new offer that is brought in, but you also have the special deposit account that you introduced last year to bring in. You have that as also, which is more attractive. You are incentivizing to come and hold here. Here, of course, you are telling them to bring it back, and there is a 1% tax. What's the rationale? Having so many legislations haven't brought anything. One is the trust factor or the confidence factor that people don't want to bring their money back. And I want to ask the panel, because your business, because I think Finance Minister did address telling entrepreneurs, not anyone else. So he specifically addressed you all, saying not that you all are holding wealth outside, but general message was to bring back money. I like a response from the Secretary as well as some inputs from the panel as to how we can also get this right, at least in this fresh effort.
I think the thinking behind is, I think you mentioned that also.
Yeah.
local guys keeping their money out, bring to our economy and invest in the trust areas or projects identified in the budget. So with the political stability also, the stability factor also matters. And I think that's the government thinking to see whether this time we would be in a way positive result would generate.
Okay, actually this is the sixth time effort. Responses from the panel, you know, I mean, if you were to, if they came to you and ask for advice, what would be a one advice on this?
If you know the number, we can tell anything, but we don't know the number. From the 1993, we don't know the number.
No money, no. I mean, that's why I said, Inland Revenue hasn't given a single amnesty. Maybe because people haven't brought the money back because they don't have the confidence. Some inputs from, what would be your quick fix?
I think for me, trust factor, why it does not work is people are little on the dark side of it. Two things. One thing is the 1% is very attractive to anybody to bring the money and invest in even in the stock market and other things that you have more return than you can keep the money overseas. That was the idea, no? Why are you keeping money overseas at a less interest rate? Come and bring it here. But now our interest rates are almost also single digit. But the question is, one of the things that might be concern of people, even if you bring $1,000 that you're holding back, can I take $100 back? You know, even that might be a cloud. So I don't know how they have to bring a legislation that is proving that they won't be hunted back again, and this money is required to come back because we need it for this country to develop.
That should be the case.
Major factor.
Depreciation of the currency. Okay, fine.
Currently also it's there, this amnesty is there in the form of the Foreign Exchange Act. Very similar provision where if you bring back the money which was not declared, I think before 2017 or 18, I can't remember the exact date. If you bring it back, you pay the 1% tax and that amnesty is there. But as rightly mentioned by the panel members, I suppose the tax aspect of it or not offering it to tax is just only one consideration. It's more the, when I bring the money back, what will be the subsequent consequences? Will I be prosecuted? Will it change? Can I take it out? So those are more the considerations rather than the tax. I think offering it to tax is
isn't it constitutionally guaranteed that, you know, once you tell in statute that, look, we will not penalize you, why the fear? Because he can always show the legislation and say, look, I have been promised non-harassment after I declare. So what's the? But there
have been issues on the consistency in the way we have operated in the past, right? If you go back to the last 20, 30 years, we have not had a single system for 10 years. So why do you want to bring your money to Sri Lanka, and especially if you invest in a local currency product, it will depreciate. So those challenges are there. So we have to be transparent and consistent. If you look at the NRI, non-resident India bond store in India, India did really well in terms of attracting the Indian diaspora into India. They had a crisis like we had. So they have done really well. I think that consistent approach and having that as a national policy and not changing taxes will be crucial for Sri Lanka to attract the diaspora money, as well as the locals keeping money outside.
Bringing money from overseas is fine, but I also feel that you need to collect taxes in a wider population within the country, right? This is very, very important because it is only, I personally believe only 50% of our country pay taxes. In this backdrop, if this unique digital identity project with the government and especially the president is embarking on this, this will be the game changer, right? Because for the first, I mean, this has been there for 20 years. We have never been able to do this. India has done the Aadhaar project. This is not rocket science. You don't need scientists. It's very simple. The key is the implementation, and which will allow your credentials to be authenticated physically and also digitally. If we have this system, then all the government institutions are linked, the banks are linked, every transaction is accountable. So you can't run around with two, three identity cards. And the tax collection will become much more this thing. So I think this is going to be the game changer, right? And this project is, you have it in the budget, it's approved. It is co-chaired by very eminent people, Dr. Hans Vijayasuri and chairman of ICTA, Jayanta. There is an eminent board with credentials, with integrity, and men of accountability, right? So the thing is, now we have the will, and if we will get this implemented. The thing is, it's not the idea, it is the implementation, and in this will happen within the next 2 years, then I think we will have a massive increase in the way we will collect our revenue due to digitization.
Yeah, I think it's a positive step, but I hope this government at least will be able to make it a reality, because yeah, I understand.
The chief executive is, he wants us to take the hill, and I will take the hill, I think.
Yeah, maybe you can come with some milestones so that we can keep tracking whether you're on course.
Of course, it will be on course.
Okay, we need to wrap it up in the next 5 minutes. So I just like to invite one suggestion that you'd like to leave with our viewers as to what would you like. Like Mano mentioned about a game changer, I would ask rest of the panel one suggestion that you feel that Sri Lanka should focus. Just one sentence maybe, starting from Charit, quickly.
Well, if you look at the capital markets recently, the capital markets have been doing really well.
Yeah.
The best performance that we have reported since 2016. So what really made this change happen is the consistency in policies and the political stability.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Right. Mano, I think you have spoken.
Yeah, but one other thing is about, I think, government and the private sector has to embrace digital transformation, and tech diffusion in all our traditional industry is very vital for our growth.
Okay, Hanif?
Yes, just bring clarity as to how international supply chain companies can set up their operations in Colombo.
Kasturi?
Stemming from Mano's, I think both private sector and public SOEs have to become more productive with digital and making sure that we can compete domestically and internationally as well.
Krishan?
To deepen the capital markets, pick one large profitable SOE and list it on the Colombo Stock Exchange.
Okay, that's good. Damika?
Yeah. Private sector confidence, because of that, I think maybe going to be a good year for the...
Okay, okay, fine. Sumal?
She has been given a lot of support by this budget and by this government, and I think now it's up to us to deliver.
Okay.
So one big challenge for FDIs is the market size we have. So one big opportunity for us is India. I think we have to make the India corridor work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shaman?
I would say that we need to track all these tax reliefs we have given and see whether it actually generates the economic activity that we expect, or is it just a cost.
Okay. That's true. I'll also like to introduce getting involved, Ranga, in your opinion, what do you think should be the key one?
Especially confident and stability should be there. Then most of the businesses they do have very confident environment. Otherwise, time to time changes will badly affect into the businesses.
Okay. Right. Thank you. So we need to wrap it up. So thank you very much, everyone, starting from the minister who came earlier on, and actually, unlike other occasions, he listened to all the comments before he spoke. So that's very positive. I'd like to thank all the business leaders who found time to come and be very frank and forthright, and also in terms of insightful comments they made on the budget and of course the way forward. I'd like to thank the Secretary of the Treasury for his valuable time, and also the lots of issues were discussed. I think given the time limitations, we covered most of the key issues affecting or concerning the budget, and I hope everyone enjoyed the discourse we had today. And we like to thank our partners, Standard Chartered Bank as one of our strategic partners, as well as PwC, Ogilvy, and SC Securities in terms of supporting us in bringing this live telecast, as well as the TV Derana and other than 24 for live telecasting, as well as several other channels of Vijay newspapers as well. So thank you very much and have a good day. Thank you.